I mean, in my brief time of talking to you, is we are both in historically deeply embedded institutions in a certain kind of system, you know, and we are navigating that space with a kind of different perception of what we want to see in the institution. And so we really connected over the institution, but that is our challenge, right?
Absolutely. So the institution, when in my case, the institution that I work for is Auckland Art Gallery, Toyo Tamaki. And the establishment of Auckland Art Gallery in 1884 was purely and initially it was placed there to show the presence of the crown. And so that's the whole reason it was placed there in the first place, was to have this Victorian style building to house these collections that were actually donated by our early colonialists, to say this is a house of knowledge. This is going to uphold our history, our European history. So that's the foundation that, you know, like for me, that's why I really connect with Kim in that institutional sort of space.
I mean, you said house of knowledge, right? And as if there is one house that houses knowledge, but it's knowledges, right? And I think the fact that, and in comparison, the University of California system, as a public research university system of 10 campuses, was originally conceived of as serving the public of our state, right? The educating our state. And because of the research mission and reputation and achieving the highest level of regard internationally for the expertise, it has kind of left the public part of that mission to, you know, and yet we're educating all of these parents and their students, you know? So we both have these core missions that have actually systemically excluded, right? The very population it was supposed to serve.
Yeah, and those diverse narratives, diverse histories, even diverse cultures are of course omitted in those, in that structure. But what's happening now in the contemporary is that we are now accepting and understanding, and because we know these institutional systems, we now know that, okay, so these systems they're not fit for purpose, and that it's time to actually reconcile with healing of the past. And the way we do that is that we have to disrupt those systems, whether it's being invisible and stealth, or whether it's in art activism. But disrupting those systems is a good thing. If I say a little bit about the Visible Voices project, I said a lot in the talk today, but so in terms of our historical prints, so we have historical prints that were created by expedition artists of Sir Captain James Cook. So these expedition artists that joined him on these voyages of the Pacific painted, they sketched these drawings of Maori and Pacific peoples, captured them in these prints, were collected, and those prints, those series of prints called the John Webber prints, his name was John Webber, are in our founding collection at Auckland Art Gallery. Now those prints that we have in our collection actually have barely or no information about who are in those prints. All the Pacific names are spelled incorrectly, and there's no information about the ceremonial use of what they're doing or contents in those prints. Now the way we're disrupting that system is that we are working now, we just piloted working with Indigenous knowledge holders, elders, hosting them to come in, access those prints, research, look at those prints, analyze them, and create actual real solid academic reports on the contents of them. What are they wearing? What's the name of that clothing? These are all Indigenous names, and those prints are revisited, but through an Indigenous lens. So what we're doing is that we are working at publishing those reports and actually changing the way that those prints are actually catalogued, categorized, classified in the actual system of the art museum itself. So going forward, once that's in our system and we publish those works, those reports, every exhibition that displays those prints will have the correct information. Every education program that's based on those prints will have the correct information. So that's how you disrupt it.
I think I just want to respond to this notion of Indigenous knowledge holder. Who is that knowledge holder? And I think in terms of the academy or the university, we award degrees and we elevate faculty with a certain expertise, a certain body of knowledge. And I think when you think about Indigenous knowledge holders, community expertise is often not regarded, right?
Yeah,
this is exactly the case where in, the expertise of the university overrides often the neighborhood knowledge, the student population. Students come in with a background and they have a certain core knowledge, but we privilege a certain kind of knowledge system, right? I think that's where we've been complicit. Like the university has been complicit with all of these cultural institutions, and I think we're starting to unpack that. And then I think the disruption is not even being created by myself or from within. It's actually the population of students we're getting in are changing, and they're coming from these diverse communities. We now have 43% first to college at our university, which is historically unprecedented. They're coming in not only with their knowledge from their communities, but I'm seeing them see their education as an empowerment to go back and bring that knowledge back to their community.
Totally. Yeah.
It has very little to do with me. I'm seeing that the movement might happen with the young people, the students who are coming from these communities.
So I should clarify that. So our Indigenous knowledge holders come from the community. So they're elders and families, and totally on the same page. One thing that we've learned, and when we talk about the academy, is that especially in Pacific and Māori culture, our histories were captured orally, and so we learnt through oral history. And so what we've learnt through the academy and institutions is that the written knowledge was given precedence over oral knowledge, and it's seen as storytelling isn't given the same weight as what this published history is. So what we're learning with Indigenous academics is that, well, actually, if this is the correct history, oral history, well, then it actually discounts what current non-Indigenous history is. And so we're rectifying that to give that weighting.
Part of our job is to open up channels to make us more porous as institutions to allow that flow, right? Somebody's got to open the door and wedge it open to allow both the public to be able to have access, not at a cost. And it used to be a free education for the residents of California. Now it's nearly $20,000 for a student tuition, right? But it's I think the more porous and the more integrated our institutions become, less centered as holders of knowledge, and more satelliting into communities, as we have seen this week here in New Zealand, this village, this kind of local embedded knowledge held across generations as a model. And if there's nothing keeping a very resourced institution from, instead of just having our students or all of our expertise come to us, we go out. And it's not outreach, it's actually collaborative. It's actually a partnership, a knowledge partnership or a creative partnership. Of course, coming from the arts, I mean, that was, we're talking about institution, but I often see the role of artists as that marginal membership of a university that is under-resourced, under-regarded in terms of what artists bring to the table. And I think integration, even across our disciplines, where scientists are in conversation with artists and historians, is going to be the knowledge commons. That's what I would like to say. It's a knowledge common. So we're having to take what we already have and reconfigure it. And so it is really having to be very resourceful about, okay, well, we have these pieces. Now our job is to connect them up and align missions, which I think is a lot of what we're trying to do, and make headway in steering this institution in a different set of directions, not one direction.
My hope, and I is that through this synergy and this meeting, is that it sparks off more powerful disruption and support of each other, that we know that the conversation we're having is a global conversation, and that we find each other, but also that we support each other in our work. We spoke before about the loneliness of operating in these sort of spaces where often when you're trailblazing or you are disrupting, there is that loneliness that comes part and parcel, because people don't necessarily don't support you, but they can't see what you see. And so this sort of networking and the Women of Impact, what it does is that it brings us all together, so that you're there, we're there for each other.